Hello and welcome to quickkt.com. In this tutorial video, I'm going to show you how to insert rows into a table in SQL Server. So I'm going to discuss three methods. So first is inserting into table by specifying the column names, and second one is inserting into table without specifying the column names, and the third method using the select statement from some other table. So the first method is inserting into table by specifying the column names. So the syntax is something like this: insert into the table name, and then you have to specify the columns in between the parentheses. So for example, if you want to insert data into 3 columns, I'm going to specify column 1, column 2, column 3, and the corresponding values which you want to insert would be value 1, value 2 and value 3. So you should make sure that you specify the values in the same sequence as you have written the column names. So this is an example of how to insert data into our table. So I'm going to insert one row into our table by specifying the column names. So let me just execute this query and check if we are able to insert one row into our table. So our table has 3 columns: ID, name and weight. So ID is taking integer values, name is taking varchar, which is nothing but string or text, and weight is taking integer values again. So right now our table is empty. So if we check, we don't have any data in our table. So I'm going to execute this statement, insert statement, which is nothing but inserting one row into our table by specifying the column names. So I'm going to execute this query. So one row is affected. So if we check the data in our table, so one row has been inserted into our table. So inserting more than one row at a time. If you want to insert more than one row at one time, so you have to specify the first set of values in between the parentheses, then separate it by a comma, and then second set of values. So if you want a third set of values, you just have to type comma and third set of values. Okay, so I'm going to insert 2 rows at a time now. So I'm going to execute this query. So 2 rows has been inserted. So let me check the data again. So 2 rows has been inserted. So the second method is inserting rows into tables without specifying any column names. So if you don't want to specify the column names, you have to specify all the values. You have to make sure to specify all the values for all the columns, and the values should be in the same order as in the columns in the table. For example, in our table the sequence is like ID, name and weight. So we have to provide values in the same sequence as in the columns in our table. So I'm going to insert 2 rows without specifying the column names. So if I execute this query and check, 2 rows must have been inserted. So the third method is using the select statement to insert data from some another table. For example, if we have another table, weights data 2, which has 2 rows with ID 7 and 8, we want to insert data from this table to our table. So let me just show you what the other table looks like. This is weights data 2. The schema is same as our table. It has 3 columns: ID, name and weight. So if we select data from this table, it has two rows with id 7 and 8. So we simply have to copy the data from this table and insert into our table. So the syntax is something like this: insert into weights data table, select id, name and weight from weights data 2 table. So if we execute this query, two rows should be inserted into our table. So if we check our table, we should see that two rows with id 7 and 8, these two rows have been inserted from the other table, weights data 2 table. So the next thing is inserting values into a table which has identity column. So this is a table which has an identity column. An identity column is a column in which you don't have to specify any values for that column. It will insert the data automatically. So you only have to specify for other columns the values for other columns, and the identity column will insert data to itself automatically. For example, identity of 1 comma 1, which means that the first row which is inserted into this table will have the value 1, and the second row will have the value 2, something like this. So this is the statement which you have to use to insert into the identity table column in identity column. So the statement is you have to insert values for other columns. You have to skip the id column because it is an identity column. So I'm going to execute this statement and check. So right now our table weights data 3 is empty, and the id column in this table is an identity column. So I'm going to insert two rows in this table. So if we check the data, the first row will have the id value as 1 and the second row will have the id value as 2.